Let's get into our first topic then. And are parents to blame for school absences? Get your calls in for this one now. New research by charity Parentkind has revealed almost a third of children have refused to go to school at least once in the past year. On top of that, a third of parents say that they argue with their child about their attendance every week. Now, Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, says that Britain faces an epidemic of school absences, but parents say that they're struggling to get their kids to go. Let's take a look at some of the reasons why children are saying that they are not going to school. I think we've got a graphic here. So the main reason, 20%, over 20%, is the child just doesn't enjoy it. I'm not sure how we feel about that as an excuse. The child has sin and school lacks the suitable provisions. That's about 10%. My child has mental health problems. My child is being bullied at the school. And then there's physical health conditions. And then there's being bullied online at the end there at just over 5%. Lynn, how do you feel about this? I mean, let's start with the main reason is that a child just doesn't enjoy it. Is that a fair enough excuse for a child not to go?
I don't know. I think there's many things in life that children going into adults, they're not going to enjoy. It's not a good enough excuse. I don't have children, so many people watching may say, well, you don't understand what it is. But I was once a child. I did refuse to go to school, and my mother's method was call the police. Oh. No, seriously. I refused to go to school for 2 weeks. The thing that people don't really talk about, my parents were going for a divorce, and I just had real behavioural issues because they were also going for a custody battle. And my mum was like, you're not seeing your father. And I was like, I am seeing my father. Well, I'm not going to school. That was my weapon. And she said, fine, after 2 weeks, she called the police. I came downstairs. I thought I was going to go and get some breakfast and go straight back to bed. And the police were waiting in the living room. And that really shook me up. And I was like, I'm not having this again. I'm going to go to school. Wow. Then when they finally resolve their differences, my mother and father, and there was regularity in me seeing both of them, I did it again. I just didn't feel like going to school. And my dad, I would get the broom and I would shove it underneath the door handle so that my mum couldn't open the door. My dad came over and he took the door off the hinges and said, you do not deserve privacy until you can act mature, which means going to school. You have nice things because I go to work. Your mother goes to work. We don't feel like going to work. Why should we get you any nice things? So I had all my nice things taken away and the door off the hinges. I didn't miss school again.
But this is really interesting because that shows that you'd be in that group of children, that 3 million that you mentioned.
I think the 20%.
In the 20%. But the question is, should parents be blamed? Now, some people would blame your parents, but actually, it's really interesting, the story you gave, because your parents should not have been blamed. It was actually, you were disenchanted, you were unhappy, you were ill at ease, there were issues at home.
Do you know what?
And I think that this is really indicative of something much wider. Children are unhappy, there's a post-COVID
No, but can I just stop you, Henry?
Yeah.
If my parents didn't have that maybe collective thinking or that creative thinking or that real disciplinarian approach, they would have been to blame. My mum said 2 weeks, that's enough. My dad said 4 days, that's enough. We're going to do something about this. And children have so many things where you can say, you really enjoy that PlayStation. You really enjoy that £40 a week or £20 a week. These are the things you enjoy. You don't get to enjoy these things until you go to school. When I'm hearing things like, I'm finding it hard, I do think there is a miscalculation or balance of who is the parent and who is the children. I have to work in family intervention all the time.
Things have changed so much since your time as a child, say, I'm not sure exactly how old you are. 20 odd years ago. Yeah. And then my term, over 40 years ago. Back then, it was spare the rod and spoil the child. Things have changed so much now. We've got the Children Act, the Human Rights Act. Children are bombarded by social media. The certainties have gone, the authority figures have gone, and children don't see the point. The waiting list for mental health treatment is over 300,000, and that is in this. I think that's been reflected, 9.1% there, and special and.
But how do they know they've got mental health issues? They're being told on TikTok, you have mental health issues. These are your problems.
I don't think
okay,
it's just
then hold on. Then we're not blaming the parents for that. Then we're blaming social media.
That's what
and
I'm saying.
We're blaming society.
But how do they get to see social media? I have friends now, they have an automatic block on how much they get to see in terms of social media. We are seeing loads of parents, again, families I work with, where I have actually asked them, when was the last time you actually looked at what your child is subjected to? When was the last time, as soon as they come in from school, they put their bag down and they're upstairs for 3 to 4 hours, subjected constantly to social media.
Well, part of the reason for
needs
that
to
is a lot
stop.
of parents, I think, are exhausted. They're desperately running hard to stand still. Financially, the cost of everything's going up. People are working 2 and 3 jobs. And the kind of parenting uncertainties that we had in the 70s when I was growing up, or the 90s and early noughties when you were growing up, they've changed beyond recognition.
But is that a good thing, Henry?
It's not a good thing.
No, and it
but
is
I'm
the
saying
parents,
it is
though.
too easy just to blame the parents. The parents are part of a wider framework of collapse, sadly.
All right, let's go to the phone lines. Get your calls in now for this 0207 862 2222. Are parents to blame for the increase in school absences? Billy from South Ayrshire, you're up first. Do you think this is a parent's fault?
Good morning, guys. Yes, I do think it's the parents' fault because they try to find a cheap holiday, and cheap prices are obviously during term time. Out with term time, holiday prices are absolutely extortionate, and parents try to take their kids.
Okay, Billy, absolutely, that is another huge issue that we're suffering in schools, and it will also contribute to the absences. But when we're looking at this board here, we're not mentioning holidays. Holidays is not a reason for these absentees. It's things like they're not enjoying school, they're having mental health problems, they're being bullied at school. So let me paint you another picture. You have a child, your child is being bullied at school by a particular group of individuals. They are feeling depressed, they're struggling to get out of bed, they're also being bullied on social media by these individuals. And this neighbouring school, so the other school that you could possibly send your child to, is full, so you can't send them there. What do you do with your child then? Do you accept that they have to be off school for a little while until the situation is resolved? Or do you just kick them into school and say, deal with it?
I fight for them to get the appropriate support. I am an adult with additional support needs, and when I was at school, I had the appropriate support I needed. So I'm partially sighted. I had a KTVI, which stands for Qualified Teacher for Visual Impairment. I had an ASN auxiliary and other teachers, etc., etc. So I had all the help I needed.
Can I ask a question, but it's quite a personal one? How old are you?
I'm 30.
Oh, you're just 30? Okay. Well, that wasn't too far. That was certainly less time than when I was at school, because I have dyslexia and I had special educational teachers as well coming. I don't think today's pupils are getting as much attention and as much access to those sorts of specialist care than they probably need, and that's maybe causing potentially causing an increase, because if you didn't have all of those things, Billy, I imagine school would have been very difficult for you.
It would have been, yeah, but thankfully what's called the Additional Support Needs Act in Scotland, it's now being changed. Changes are being made to it to ensure that every single pupil in Scotland gets the appropriate help they need.
Brilliant. Well, that'll be fantastic, and hopefully that will reduce certainly the 10% of the children with SEN at school lack suitable provisions. Hopefully that would reduce that right down. Thank you very much for your call. David from Greater Manchester, what's your thoughts on this?
I've got a grandson who's in his early teens. He's, excuse me a minute, he's got really bad ADHD going into autism. And if he sets his mind to it, nothing will make him go to school. The school are brilliant. His mum, single parent. I've got a chest infection.
Oh, David, that's terrible. I thought you'd just been waiting for ages on the phone, because often you forget to cough and breathe and things, and then once you get on air, it all comes out. That happens all the time, David. Listen, they say there's nothing will make a child go to school, but Lynn's parents called the police. Maybe she should call his mother if it's a single parent, because I understand if you've got a child that's 6'4", you can't, in my head, I would grab my son by the ear and I would drag them into the car and I would hand them over to a teacher. But I understand if you're a single parent and your child's 6'4" and they could overpower you, this is a little bit more difficult. I mean, when I was growing up, my mum just had to look at me in a certain way and I would move so fast, it would give Usain Bolt a run for his money. So I don't understand we can't get them to school, because physically there are ways of making a child get to school.
It's a nightmare because, like I say, he's got to be at least 5'10". He's a stocky, strong lad.
Yeah.
And my daughter's 5 foot nothing.
What
Police
about
have
calling
been
the police,
involved.
David? What about you getting down there and helping out?
Well, the funny thing is, the only other person who's been in his life all his life is his mum. And yet when social services, like CAMS, they don't take into account people like me. People like me, granddads, don't get involved.
Yeah, but you don't need the social services to tell you to get involved, David. You just rock up there at 8:30 and you say, "Come here, get to the door. We're getting in the car. We're getting on the bus, and we're going." That's it. That's it.
It's like Problem Storm at 8:30 in the morning. I'm at work.
This is, well, and there you go. Do you know what, David? I really appreciate you for calling up, because actually that is a change in society as well. Back in the day, you had grandparents who weren't working. Nowadays, many grandparents are working. And actually, much of the time, they don't live in the same city as their children, so you don't have that family support that they used to. So I really appreciate your daughter must be going through a very tough time. But we're also missing the bigger picture here. If your grandson has ADHD and autism, and there isn't those special needs help at school, even if you got him to school, how much of a positive impact is that going to be having on him?
And the thing is, Storm, that would feed in from the 9.8% my child has SEN and school lacks suitable provision into my child doesn't enjoy school. Because if you've got all that and there's no provision, you're not going to enjoy school.
You also start to understand that it's not all cookie cutter stuff. It's not one size fits all. David, thank you for your call. Kelly from West Midlands, what's your thoughts?
Hiya. I don't think that you can blame parents. I think a lot of it now is you need to look at the education system itself. You need to look at deeper inside of what's actually going on inside these schools. I can speak from a personal experience. My son's got medical conditions. He received a lot of bullying, both verbal and physical, throughout school. Schools haven't really done much about it at all. And to add on for that, the head teacher has punished my son for 7 months over something that is ludicrous. I just think there's a lot of bullying that's going on inside the schools that comes from the educators, the teachers, higher up, head teachers and things like that. And I think that needs to be looked at a lot more. And I think you'll find that 20% my child don't enjoy school, I bet you a lot of the percentage of that comes from how the children are treated within the education system.
Well, perhaps, and they're not admitting it, but there is another graph just down below, another bar that says my child is being bullied at school, so there was an option for that, but maybe the child isn't admitting it. I appreciate. Kelly, it sounds like you're going through a really tough time. Have you tried to get your son to move school so he could be happier elsewhere?
So with my son's medical, because he was shut down in the early stages when he started school, he don't open up to people, so we find it hard to build rapport with people. So with his psychologist, she admitted that moving schools probably isn't the best option. Now I'm trying to fight what's going on within the school at the minute, but the local authority, Department of Education, they're so hard to get through to. It's like they're a little cult. And I think that these schools do need looking at. And then I think once this is addressed, you'll probably find a lot of children will start going back into school. I don't think they're valued. I think they're looked down on and they're talked upon. And they want to treat them all like robots.
Children
are. That is a big factor.
Okay, children are. Okay, Kelly, thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it might be difficult to move your child's school, but at the end of the day, if it's really not getting through to the teachers and the head teacher, it might just be a move that you have to make. Michelle from Staffordshire, what's your thoughts?
Hello, hi. So I've got a teenage son who's currently in secondary school who's autistic. He's also got anxiety separation disorder. Separation
disorder? What's that from? Is that COVID related or sorry?
No. He was diagnosed very young. It's linked with his autism, so it's extreme anxiety.
Fine.
So he struggles to be away from his safe space, his home. We attended primary school all fine because obviously when he was younger, he was more controllable. You could kind of just tell him this is what you had to do, even though it was a huge struggle. Going into secondary school with a child with SEN needs, there is just not enough support in mainstream schools. He currently hasn't got an EHCP because I was always told he didn't qualify for one, even though he's diagnosed autistic. so we've had to stick with mainstream schools. The school have been supportive as much as they can, but I do believe that it's government, it's funding. They can't do any more for my son or provide anything else due to lack of funding.
Well, what I'm hearing actually is a lot of the callers that have called in are talking about children in their lives and children that they love who have extra educational needs or special needs, whether it's neurodivergency or academic. And that seems to be the root of the problems. And if it is, then funding in schools is a big part of that. Michelle, thank you very much for your call.
I'm seeing a massive shift here, Storm, because during my time in the 70s and the 80s, if people didn't want to go to school because they didn't like the maths, the English, the Latin, it was the subjects. Now it's the change in society. There's huge
I think we're
number of
giving
people.
children too many excuses.
Well, no, I'm just saying there's a huge rise in neurodivergence.
We're overdiagnosing.
How is it? All these other things.
How is it?
Mental health problems.
We're going to have to draw this down because I can see Susanna, we're just heating up again. So we'll move on.